Thanks for joining me. And you had reached out to me and have quite the story that kind of predated inflation. It's been going on for a long time, but inflation has certainly made it worse. Single mother, um, recently got out of treatment, mental health treatment a couple years ago. No insurance right now. So that's kind of the first parts. But I don't want to tell your story. So why don't you share like what made you reach out to me and what you've been dealing with, particularly that worsened due to the inflation.
Yeah. So like you said, I got out of mental health treatment a couple years ago, and that was something that I had been dealing with for a long time, and was really struggling during that time. At one point, I had lost my roommate and had to take on a second job, and it was just like between all of the jobs and trying to be a mom and trying to take care of my mental health, it all just kind of came together, and I couldn't handle it anymore. So I did decide to get treatment. I was in there for probably 4 or 5 months, and I have to say that it was the best decision that I've ever made in my life. I am a completely new person since I have been able to get that, and so I feel incredibly lucky that I was able to get access to those resources at that time. And then obviously, so I got out of that late 2019. I had to give up my home previously in order to get to afford the treatment. So when I got out, I was supposed to stay with a friend and for a couple months while I got it back on my feet. And then that ended up not working out. And I was homeless for a couple of months until I found the most recent place that I'm at in early 2020. So I moved in here, like I said, early 2020, and it was within 2 or 3 weeks that the pandemic had hit.
Can I move backwards for a second? When
Yeah.
you were homeless, were you homeless with your child at the time?
No. So actually, while I was in treatment, side thing that I was dealing with is, so I had come out as queer a little bit before the time that I was in the hospital, and my son was actually staying with my dad at the time. And then once I came out, I started having a lot of problems with them, and them trying to control what I could talk to my son about, where I could take him. I wasn't allowed to take him to parades or, anything that they deemed as inappropriate. And so he was staying with them at that time while I was homeless. And the plan initially was that he was going to stay with them until I had gotten out and gotten back on my feet. And then they decided while I was in there that they were going to go behind my back and take me to court and get custody of my son. So I came back, and not only was I dealing with all of the stuff, but so he was staying with them. Long story short, he was staying with them while I was out of a house for a little while. And then the plan all along was that once I got the house and was back on my feet, that, he would come home and everything would go back to normal. And that wasn't the case. I did get a new place within about 3 months of getting home. And once I got in there, it started a whole, on top of the pandemic, dealing with that. I was also going through custody battles at the time of my parents trying to basically say that because I'm queer or because I was trying to take my son to pride parades, or I allowed him to dress as a girl character for Halloween, that I was basically abusing him and just tried to say all these lies about me.
I hope you don't live in Texas, because they'll come after you criminally for.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, thank God I don't live in Texas. Thank God I live in a state where I didn't have to worry so much about that actually impacting it. And when I did go through the court system, and my lawyers, everybody recognized what they were doing for exactly what it was, and didn't hold any of that against me. So I'm very lucky that I was in a state where I didn't have to worry about that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're homeless. Tell me about that, because was that after the mental health treatment?
Yes, that was after. So like I said, I came home and I had arrangements planned, and I was there for probably about a week before things just didn't work out. And then that was the point that I was legitimately homeless. So I did kind of couch surf for a couple of weeks until I found a place that I could stay temporarily. But the place that I was staying at was like under construction. There was constantly people walking in and out. So like I had a place to lay my head so that I wasn't legitimately sleeping in the streets or in my car. But that experience in and of itself, being in that place, not having privacy, having people walk through my stuff, having to like cook food in the midst of dust everywhere, was an experience in and of itself.
Mm-hmm. And I'd love to know, because the time frame you're talking about, that's like 2020.
Mm-hmm.
You're starting to hear at that time, Biden gets elected. Of course, there was the election shit, but then Biden gets in, and all of a sudden the economy's coming back, and the economy's booming 2020, 2021. And I was on a road trip during that time talking to homeless people being evicted, and I'm like, who the fuck is the economy booming for?
Right.
I wonder what you think, having experienced homelessness, and I'm sure meeting all sorts of people in the streets. The alternate reality that is often framed by our corporate media.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you that it's like this double narrative. And something that I kind of, I liken it to, like an abusive relationship. When you're in an abusive relationship, they gaslight you and they give you an alternate reality and make you question and feel like everything is your fault and it's your individual problem and you're the issue. And that's how I feel like it is nationally too. Like we did have Biden come in and they started, there were good things that happened in the beginning that seemed like maybe there was some hope that he was going to actually do something for regular people. But obviously that didn't last very long. Less than a year. So I mean, it's the same thing on the ground now. And, and I'm dealing it with it in my city too, where they're off traveling the country, talking about how great things are and how much economic development and the plans for the future. But then if you look around, like everybody here is struggling and begging the city and begging people for help, and for programs or, outreach to be able to help people kind of make it through this time. But so it's the same dynamic there. And it's just, they're all in their own little bubble. I mean, it does not even kind of match the reality on the ground.
Right. Okay. So take me a little bit forward. You were homeless and then you got a new job, and, tell me what happened next.
Yeah. So I moved into this place about March 2020. And
you're in Illinois, right?
Yes, I'm in Illinois. Yeah. I'm a Chicago suburb. So I'm about an hour away from the city. So I got this place and things did start looking up. I got a new job. I actually got like a 30% raise with this job. And then around the same time, I was able to get through the court systems, get my son back. Everything was really looking good, for the, upcoming years. And to back up a little bit, I have been trying to go to school since I got out of high school. And I did go to community college and was able to pay for that. But now that I need my university degree, I can't afford it. I don't make enough, I don't get enough in financial aid to help. And it's basically like you need a degree to get a job that pays you enough, but you need a job that pays you enough to get the degree, or you have to decide to take on the debt. And with me, between the medical debt and the legal bills and all that kind of stuff, I mean, that's just completely out of the realm of possibilities. So there's already like this limit on, unless you get really lucky, on where you can go. But anyways, I was really excited about this new job. Everything was looking up. I was really, I have a lot of debt from the previous years, like I said. And so it was like, okay, I'm going to be able to pay down this debt. I'm going to be able to afford my rent. And I will be able to put a little bit of money away, putting us on like a better track. And one of the big things is that, during so my son is 8, and during the last 8 years since he's been born, we have had to move a lot because of just different economic reasons, rent getting raised, or, there was one end of a relationship and, just normal life stuff. So when I got here, I really, really wanted to stay here. We're in a good school district. There's lots of kids in the neighborhood for my son to play with. Like it's just all around, like end of 2020 things, even though things in the world sucked, things in my life were better. You know, I did have this new job. Things economically were going to be better in the future. I had gotten the mental health care that I needed and was able to cope with, you know, some of the stuff that was going on when I got home. And yeah, like I said, everything looked good until like, it was about like January this year when things really started to kind of slowly sink down course. I would say, like, you know, the beginning of the year, January, February, I was feeling okay. February is when, no, I don't remember. It was like around the time the Ukraine war and stuff started is when I felt like things really started to like escalate for me. At that point, like, you know, food prices are starting to rise and my car broke down. And now, like, not only did my car break down, but there's like 4 or 5 different things wrong with it. It needs new tires, new starter, new timing belt, new catalytic converter. I also need dental work done. I also lost my insurance when I turned 27, which was last February. And now
good old Obamacare, right? We'll
oh,
give
it's
you
lovely. It's lovely.
we'll
Yeah.
give you a Republican healthcare plan until 26. Yep.
Love it. You know, and my son has healthcare because he's covered under the state, but they won't cover me. They say that I make too much for me personally to have health insurance. And so, you know, I knew this before I lost the health insurance when I was debating, but I had looked at like the prices of the medicine and stuff like that and felt like, you know, it's a pretty common medicine, so it's not very expensive to pay out of pocket. But what I didn't think about at the time was the fact that you have to go see the doctor like at least twice a year to get refill authorizations. And so even though I can afford the medication, I can't afford the doctor's visits to get the refills. So now on top of everything that I'm dealing with just the financial uncertainty and whether I'm going to have a car soon, I am unable to really pay for my mental health meds. And I have started to ration them recently where I'm now taking them like every other day, just to, because if I can't, I could try and self-wean, but this is a type of medication that if you wean off of it, the withdrawal symptoms are just unbearable. So I'm basically just taking enough to like stave off the withdrawal symptoms.
And this is medication for a physical or a mental?
For my mental health.
Okay. And
which obviously
you're getting off the medication because you can't afford it or because you don't think you need it?
Because I can't afford it. Yeah, I'm honestly terrified about the medicine situation because I haven't been off of it since I've been home. I have no idea, you know, I feel like I'm doing better, you know, my coping skills, all that stuff, but I don't know what my brain is going to be like. You know, there are just like legitimate chemical stuff. And it's not just normal depression, it's, you know, PTSD. So it's,
I want to share my story. I mean, I've told the audience a little bit, but this isn't to scare you, but I think you should hear this because this is why we do these stories, because this is outrageous that she has to risk her mental health because of money. So for me, you know, as a kid, I had depression, nothing like, I grew up like middle class, you know, good parents. I just think genetically I was predisposed to it. It was pretty low grade. They put me on medication. Then my senior year of college, I had like my first, I would say, like manic depressive state. I just couldn't get out of bed. They drugged me up. Like I was like knocked out like a horse on so many medications. Maybe 2 months into it, the clouds lifted and I finished out my senior year. 2015, I had moved back to my parents' house on Long Island to save money because I was writing. I was writing for a blog and I was working from home. So I said to myself, well, this is the last time I'll probably have a chance just to save money. And maybe I could bank a year just living at my parents' house. For me, I'm sure with your mental health, you have to learn about like what your triggers are. For me, isolation is a trigger. So if I don't have socialization for a while, if I'm just sitting at home myself, it could trigger depression. And boy, did it trigger significant depression. I was also, this is a long story, I was also taking Ambien, which is a bad thing. So I was on Ambien, a couple other things, and this was May 2015. For the first time in my life, I was just starting to think, not like developing a plan, but like suicidal thoughts. So I said something at the time to my mom, who, I'm pretty close with. I went to a psychiatrist. They put me inpatient for a while, like you said. And I was between two mental health facilities. I was hospitalized for a month before they got me on the right medication. Problem was, the medication was wonders for my depression. It destroyed my stomach. As the years went on, I had just horrendous constipation, not to be TMI, but just to the point where I wasn't going. And obviously that backs you up. The moral of this story is, last year I got off the medication because, I said, oh, I'm feeling pretty good. And I'm on a low dosage of the medication. I was on like 75 milligrams of this antidepressant. And my psychiatrist, which, like you said, is wildly expensive. I had to go 3 times a year. It was $250 a session. Without it, didn't take insurance. He said, well, people are different. 5 years ago, your brain chemistry was this. A lot of people have depression, but years later can handle not being on medication. Well, I couldn't. And I got wildly depressed. And then it was just this game for months of getting back on, trying a different antidepressant. Constipation comes back. Getting on a different antidepressant. Constipation comes back. To the point where last year around Thanksgiving, I got off again, and I just took like over-the-counter shit that had like serotonin stuff in it, but it just wasn't strong enough. And the moral of this story is, I wasn't rationing because of money. I was trying to get off because I couldn't go to the bathroom like a normal person. But when I realized, you know what, I'm going to have to be on antidepressants for the rest of my life, and I'm just going to have to deal with the constipation, or at least try different things. I got back on the medication, and it took a while. It took like 5 weeks, but finally everything lifted. And by the way, I was doing like live streams and trying to put on a happy face while you know what depression is. So the moral of this story is, I got off and it really fucked me up, but at least I could get back on because the money wasn't the problem. So just imagine, if you're in the audience, what she's saying. She was hospitalized not like 5 years ago. You're talking 2 years ago. For whatever it was, you finally have a medication that's lifted things a little bit and allowed you to be functional. And now you have to basically get off it, not because it's not working, but because you can't afford it. I mean, it's crazy that we live in a country, and what you hear from everybody should have access. Well, you do have access. You just can't fucking afford it.
Right.
It's just crazy. Sorry to give that long-winded thing, but that was my experience.
No, that's okay. Yeah, and even speaking of it, I think I had shared with you that my son is also showing signs of mental health issues. That's really popped up within the last year. And he, like I said, does have health insurance through the state, but good luck finding anybody around here especially for mental health services, that are going to take state insurance, especially Illinois, because there were several years where the state wasn't paying their bills for like Medicaid users and stuff like that. So it created, there's just a ton of places that took away the option to use the healthcare. So not only me am I trying to navigate my own mental health with this medicine and trying to make sure that I'm able to stay stable. I'm also trying to, what do I do for my son who is only 8? Like, this is so early to be experiencing those kind of symptoms. And I just don't really know what to do with them, because it's the same thing. They don't take insurance. And like I said, I can't afford it for myself, let alone to be able to take him somewhere. And it's so messed up. It's so messed up.
Absolutely. Can you kind of talk about, is this current thing where you're trying to wean yourself off the medication because you can't afford the doctors, this and that? Is it basically because of inflation? I know you, in your email to me, you were talking about food prices. Like, you're basically kind of limiting yourself on what you eat too because food prices are so expensive?
Yeah, I mean, so when I first decided to go off of it, I felt like I was in a place economically that even though it would be difficult, I would be able to figure it out. And then it's really been the last, like I said, 6 months that like the inflation piece has started to hit in, and it's a mixture of a lot of things. It's the inflation, it's the car going out at the wrong time, with all of that needs to be finished. Yeah, it's just like a lot of different stuff. And like with the food, food prices have been going up slowly over the last couple months, and I was doing okay, kind of keeping within my budget. But then as soon as my son was on summer break, he got the free lunches and free breakfast at school. That really helps during the school year. And last year they had a program where they continued it through the summer, but this year they changed it. And now it's not through the school, it's through the city, but it's nowhere near my neighborhood, and it's in the middle of the day, and they make you sit there and eat the lunch in front of them. And I'm working all day. I can't drive across town. I can't spend a half an hour sitting there for you to watch him eat to make sure that, that he's not going to throw the food away. I don't know, or give it to somebody else. Like, I don't understand what the problem is, but anyway, so between, the food prices going up anyway, and just all of a sudden having him home all day long, and having to feed, all of the meals without help, my grocery bill has like almost doubled since like March. And it is to the point where like, the last couple days before I get paid again, we're getting creative with what kind of meals we're going to eat. And oftentimes either I find myself either just so stressed that I'm not hungry, or I look in the fridge and I'm concerned about if there's going to be enough food for my son to last till the end of the week. And so I decide not to eat, or maybe I just pick up his leftovers of whatever is, he's eating for dinner, just to like stave off the hunger and give me a little bit of something. But yeah, I mean, I've noticed, especially over the last couple months, that as the prices and everything is hitting, that I'm subconsciously not eating in order to.
And I take it, correct me if I'm wrong, I take it since the father of your child and his family was trying to, I guess, get custody of your child, that he's not helping that much financially?
So it's actually my parents that were doing that with the custody.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. His dad is not in the picture. His dad hasn't been in the picture. His dad was very abusive, and is a lot of the reason actually why I have PTSD, because after I broke up with him, he kind of went nuts. So that's why I have the PTSD. But anyways, I had cut him out a long time ago. So it's just me. I don't have any support from anybody else.
And with your job, you mentioned your job. If you want to share what you do, you don't have to. Have they? A lot of these companies are price gouging right now. So is what you're doing? Are they making less money? Are they making more profit? Because it sounds like you're working in a job that isn't paying you enough to pay your bills.
Yeah. So I actually work in fraud for financial institutions. I had how fitting is that? Is lovely. Morally crushes my soul, but you gotta do what you gotta do. But
yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but
no, it's okay.
I had to.
Yes, I regret it. But anyway, yeah, no. I work in fraud for financial institution, and I used to work at a credit union, which made me feel better about my job at least. But the pay there was awful. So I finally, last year, decided it was time, especially part of the reason I couldn't really get a new job when I was going through my mental health struggles was because my job was like the only stable thing that I had at the time. And there was just no way I was going to get a new job and be able to perform in the way that I normally can perform. So it was like, once I got out, I was in a good place. I can get a new job. So I did go get this new job. I won't say what company it is, but it is one of the fuckers. But and they pay way better than anybody else does, as far as what I'm doing. But I mean, the bar is so low that even if you're paying me, 2 or 3 times what the minimum wage is, I mean, nowadays it's nothing. Like, that's what the minimum wage should be, is what I'm getting paid. So even though it sounds great, like I got this great raise and, things are looking up, like it ended up not like really doing anything because I got offset by all of these other expenses. So even though I'm making more, I'm basically in the same spot that I was prior to this job.
And also, I mean, at the end of the day, you're living an hour from Chicago. Chicago is crazy expensive. The suburbs around it are not cheap. Well, I should say, excuse me, the gentrified part that they've made beautiful in Chicago is expensive. But even the parts outside that they've left to rot are still, getting more expensive. And it's kind of, I think people need to realize that the two things are connected. So even if you don't technically have like a mental health problem and we all have our issues, but you don't have a mental health problem per se, economic stress could really, there's a thin line between economic stuff and mental health. A lot of people with economic problems, you're talking about getting off medication that you probably shouldn't be getting off medication for economic reasons, eating less. I mean, that could really fuck up your mental health for sure. Can you kind of talk about that? Like right now, fortunately, you've been coping mental health wise, but are you worried that, because one of my fears has always been like, I don't want to ever go back to that place I was in years ago, where I was hospitalized.
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly probably like my greatest fear, is that I'm ever going to relapse and be so far down in that same place. So while I'm thankful and I feel okay right now, I am coping. I'm very, very scared. Especially not seeing, if there was light at the end of the tunnel, it was only going to be a couple months, I'd be fine. But there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And it seems like every couple weeks, things are just getting worse and worse, whether in my personal life or just even like economically with the nation. And I don't know what I do. Like once I finally get off this medication, I don't know how I'm going to react to that. If I stay on, even the fact that I'm rationing it right now I don't know what that's doing. I'm very scared about any impacts that could have. Right now I'm in my house and I'm okay, at least for now. But if things don't change in the next 6 to 12 months, I'm going to be moving again. And I've seen the rent prices, how they've gone up just over the last 2 years. And I see the gentrification plan that the city is doing right now. Like, they're very open and obvious about it. So, okay, I can just move to another house that maybe I don't pay as much. But by the time I find another house, it's going to be the same as this. And you're talking about a lack of housing. You hear about the rent wars and stuff that happen in San Francisco and stuff like that. And that's what I'm scared of. I'm scared that I'm going to get kicked out of this place and I'm not going to have anywhere to go. And, once you start, I can handle where I'm at now, but once you start throwing that kind of stuff in it, that's a huge wrench in your life, to lose your house and to have to wonder where you're going to go. And I did have a conversation with my son about it the other day, and he's not cool with the idea of moving, even when I just kind of momentarily brought it up to see how he would react. He did not have a good reaction. And also the other big thing too is the schools that I'm around are some of the better schools in our city. The other 2 school districts are very underfunded. They don't have a lot of resources. There's a lot of kids that go in there that need help that don't get the help that they need. And because of my son, he has ADHD as well, on top of the mental health things that I've seen from him. And the school that we're at has amazing programs and resources that they have been able to help him and spend a little bit more one-on-one time with him. to, help him through some of the challenges he's having in school due to his ADHD and mental health. So, that's the other thing that I'm terrified of is if I move somewhere else where I can't afford the house, what about the school district? And what about my son? Is he going to be able to get the resources that he needs? If he doesn't get the resources he needs, how does that affect his mental health? Which, of course, all of that in turn affects my mental health, because as a parent, it's awful. It's awful to see your kid speak about how they see life and see them struggle and not be able to give them the stability or to keep them in a place where they have resources and friends, and I don't know. Yeah. So I'm if things don't turn around, which I don't expect them to at this point, especially since we already see a recession coming. And the other thing too with my job is I'm technically contract right now. When I applied for the job, I had an interview with the VP of the department, who told me that as long as I met my quality scores, that they would for sure hire me on full time. But now that the recession is coming and it seems like the bank is kind of playing some games, I actually don't know if they're going to hire me on, which means that I also have this question mark around my job. Am I going to have a job in January? Am I going to have to look for another job? Am I going to be able to keep, there's just so many variables that I don't know what's coming, and I'm terrified. I'm terrified. And like I said, my son's already been through so much that if I were to have another breakdown with my mental health, I don't know how he's going to get through it. So, yeah.
I'd like to ask because, the reason I do this, and by the way, these are the type of interviews, they'll never go viral. YouTube's not going to recommend them because YouTube exists not to show any of this. Of course, corporate media doesn't want to show any of this because then people would be outraged if the masses saw this is how so many are living.
Right.
But I wonder, you don't seem like a hardcore political person to me. Like, you said, you gave Biden a chance in the beginning, you liked some of the things you heard. So as somebody who isn't like, maybe I'm wrong, but isn't like a die in the wool burner, like Bernie girl, but just somebody who's like living, you're not like, you don't have the luxury of like being hardcore either side. What does it say to you that it just seems to me this president acts like he is powerless? Like he got in there. Well, first of all, we were told, if you were paying attention, this is the guy who could get stuff done. Mm-hmm. He gets in there and immediately makes an excuse why we can't put a $15 minimum wage into a bill because some unelected parliamentarian said we can't. Right. So then forget, the term public option. He ran on a public option, which would probably help you right now, healthcare wise. That's gone. He ran on $2,000 checks. Never happened. I mean, I could go down the list. Police reform, so many things. And everything's an excuse. Oh, well, Manchin and Sinema doesn't even try to pressure them publicly. What does it say to you? Because it's kind of like we're in this cycle again. Well, now and I'm not minimizing it. Obviously the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade is catastrophic and all that. But now they're saying they're always saying vote. Well, you did vote. You did vote. So what does it say to you that now they're saying if you just give us 2 more senators, so Manchin and Sinema will have enough votes to go around them. All right, if they have too much, if you give the Democrats control of the Senate and 2 more senators, you believe they're going to pass a $15 minimum wage? You believe they're going to pass anything on healthcare? What does it say to you that basically they're not doing much? I know the Republicans are awful, but they're not doing much of anything.
Yeah. So I haven't been like a super duper political person. I have definitely gotten more radicalized over the last couple of years, especially seeing what has happened in my own experiences. But, I wasn't happy that Biden was the nominee in the first place. I did want Bernie. At the time I was okay with Yang, he was at least fucking better than anybody else, in my opinion. But, so when Biden got elected, it was kind of like, whatever, whatever, like at least it's not Trump. And I did have, even though I didn't want him, I did have some faith in the way that he was talking, that he did actually see and understand the gravity of the moment, and that maybe he would do something. So, he got in there, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. He did that first COVID thing, which of course there was already issues, like you said, with the $15 minimum wage being taken out of it. And then, they didn't do the $2,000 checks, they did the $1,400. And it's like, okay, well, okay, whatever, but then it's like, what the fuck has happened since then? We watched Build Back Better, the negotiations around that was a total joke. And, it's just laughable to me, this guy who has spent most of his career trying to be president, and now he's president. And it's like, dude, where the fuck are you? Like, why did you want this position so badly for most of your life? And now you're in here and you're not doing anything. Like, it's mind-blowing how much of a failure he is right now. Mind-blowing. And you're right. The Republicans are awful. They're awful, but they're doing this whole vote for Democrat thing. And I'm thankful that it seems like some people are starting to wake up to that. But I have absolutely no hope after the first 2 years of this administration that the next 2 years are going to be anything different, or that we're going to get anything out of him.
Right.
Yeah.
And being that you're a Bernie person, I got to tell you, I've never been like, hey, hashtag fraud squad. Like, I think it's kind of whatever. I'm a journalist, so I'm not like jumping on hashtags for that. But I got to tell you, there's not much opposition to this neoliberalism right now. Even Bernie's kind of asleep. They're not holding protests at the White House and rallying activists about inflation. There's several things Biden could do on inflation. AOC just wrote Chuck Schumer a letter asking him to declare that that these Supreme Court justices lied under oath. A letter she's writing to Chuck Schumer that they lied under oath. There's been a lot of letters to Biden asking him to do things. Ro Khanna's out there, nobody should primary Biden. That's detrimental. Bernie came out, I'm not going to run if Biden runs, and shocker, Biden invited him over for dinner at the White House the next night. I bring this up because I don't think we should have any heroes. I'll credit Bernie and them when they deserve credit, but I don't even see them agitating at all, really, Biden right now. And it's the same shit. Well, we don't want to help the Republicans win, but people knocked on doors for these progressives because for a lack of, literally, she said, we're going to bring the ruckus to the Democratic Party. So what are your thoughts on that? Because you're clearly not getting what you need from Biden, but you're not really having any advocates for you necessarily in DC right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I still support the squad. I was never the hashtag fraud squad in the beginning. I'm very much, I like to give people the benefit of doubt. I want to see what they're going to do. But the squad and progressives, Bernie, all of them, biggest betrayal. It's worse than what Biden's done. At least we knew Biden's record. At least we, even though he tried to lie to everybody and pretend like he was going to be something that he was never going to be, at least we knew that that's who Biden was, versus the progressives who, you're right, have been completely missing in action since the beginning. Even that, like the first thing with the COVID bill and the $15 minimum wage, like that should have been progressives putting their foot down and saying like, okay, you won and we're here and we're going to get these things that you said you were going to do. And the fact that they, that was just like one of the first instances where they let it down, and it's been nothing since that, or nothing more than that since then. And, like you said, they love sending letters and they love making their little tweets, but that doesn't, whether I agree with their letters or their tweets, that doesn't do anything to change the lives of people. And so it's no better than the same theater we're getting from everybody else. I was encouraged that AOC was willing to accept the criticism that she got about the Amazon labor union stuff, and came back out, the next weekend or whatever it was, and did do a rally there with Bernie. But even, what's happened since then? Like, we have to all attack you on the internet to get you to do the simplest thing. That's literally your job.
And I think, people aren't really expecting them to wave a magic wand.
Right.
They're not president. They're not They don't have, but to literally fight and just agitate and kind of what Shama Sawant does in Seattle really well. So yeah, I understand that. My last question simply is, what's your message out there? Because honestly, a lot of my viewers, not the same story, but similar stories of economic insecurity. I mean, I've been when I've shared like stuff about my depression, there's a lot of people in the channel audience that have had depression, anxiety, bipolar. People have reached out to me privately. Just like, what's your message to people watching? Because frankly, inflation gets covered like it's an acute thing, and it's like it's here now, but it will be better. We've had inflation for 20 years. It's called gentrification. It's just not called inflation, but like, what the fuck is gentrification, which I call economic terrorism? It's pricing people out of where they live. And that's fucking scary. That's scary if you're going to be priced out of where you live and you don't know where. You're saying, when I look at prices elsewhere, it's I can't afford it either. So, what's your message to people that maybe not the same exact situation you're dealing with, but have some similar economic stresses right now?
So I would say, for the mental health piece of it, anybody that's dealing with mental health issues, I just hope that you know that you're not alone. And I know it's very hard to get resources, but there are resources out there if you do have health insurance. I know people get scared of the stigma that comes with being hospitalized or getting help, but it really can change your life if you are able to do that. If you're not able to do that, like I said, just know that you're not alone. There are support groups out there that are free. And again, I know that that's scary too, but that's something that I did that really did help me to be able to meet other people who could empathize and recognize that what I was going through. Also, as far as the economic piece of it, obviously that's intermingled, but I would say on that piece is just know that it's not your fault. The media and the politicians, they want, everything is about individualism and everything is about, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, and we're not going to give you a handout and blah, blah, blah. And that can be very psychologically damaging to people. And it can make you feel like things are your fault when they're really not. I mean, I feel all the time, I struggle with the shame of my situation and feeling like I am unable to get out of where I'm at and this rut that I'm in. But I think it's just very, very important to remember that we are not victims, but we are victims of a system that has been going on for a long time that has purposely put us in these economic and mental strains. And again, I just really want to stress to people that no matter what you're dealing with, like, it really is not your fault. And it's maddening. I mean, my heart goes out to anybody that's struggling. Like, it's maddening what they're doing. And I just hope that everybody is able to, recognize that it's not your shame to carry, and to maybe be able to find people to talk about who can validate what you're going through and might be going through similar situations.
Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.